Welcome to the finale of my Fire Emblem Thracia 776 Ironman. This is the final chapter of the game. It's a pretty challenging one. I'm going to go through all aspects of it. We have plenty of time for that, and I have some decent extra fare to fill up some of the time. We are in regular time. There's no speed up or anything, even though there probably are some kind of dead spots, and I don't know if I have something for every single second of this video, but we're going to try. I'm going to try and put together a lot of cool little tidbits for you in this chapter, just as a reward for making it here with me. Thank you for bearing with me across a lot of hiccups just in the making of these videos. My first video series of this kind. One thing I want to get out of the way before I forget is that coming up here when I'm going to regain control of my characters, there's going to be a very minor splice. Just because when I was recording my play of this chapter, I didn't start recording until halfway through this conversation with Manfred and Veld. So what I did was, just before recording this, I went back and recorded the intro to this chapter and just spliced it in. So if you have a keen eye or keen ear, you'll notice that that's why there's a bit of a hiccup coming up right here. It's not that I tried to fudge the run in any way. Although, you have no way of knowing that I didn't do that anyway, since I'm not doing these live or anything. But if you had those kinds of concerns, you probably wouldn't be here at the final chapter. So there are 6 rooms, all with units like the ones that you see here, that Tanya is thinking about taking on. They all have a boss-type creature, 2 henchmen, and then a lob-tier mage in front of the door. This is sort of the prototype for the Fire Emblem 7 final chapter, or at least the first part of it, being that each of the units that's standing on the rune tile in these rooms is meant to be like a morph of maybe a character that you know. There's like a thief, an archer that you see, or a sniper, you could say. There's a baron, and if you think about it, you can probably figure out who each of these might be. So if you don't recruit or get certain characters killed throughout the course of the game, or in the case of the sniper, you just pass up on the chance to re-recruit them, essentially, then they appear here as the Dead Lords. And the requirements for getting those aren't always consistent. Like, the one here is for Dagda, and I'm not sure if I even check his portrait at any point to see, because if those people are still alive, then the portrait will just be like the generic enemy portrait for that class. But with Dagda, it's like, I think you have to not visit his Gaiden rather than get him killed. But in the case of the one up here, that's if you don't recruit Lifis. I'm pretty sure I've gotten him killed before, and then like in the course of a chapter, rather than not recruiting him, and he still appeared here as one of the morphs. So I don't think the rules are always entirely consistent. So there's this thief fighter here. The next one over is this hero. The next one over beyond that is a promoted sister. The one in the lower left is a sniper that we saw. The one in the lower middle is a baron, and the one in the lower right is a warrior. And they're all dangerous in their own ways, some more than others. But the first thing you have to worry about, honestly, like the most important thing is, like on turn 1, is taking care of these just regular lob-tier mages. they each have a siege tome, and they each have, I don't know what it's called in English, like the Hell Tome or whatever, that takes you down to 1 HP. And then you could just get picked off the next turn, basically. So even if you hang back a little bit, you're going to take some damage, and if you try and attack them, you run the risk of not killing them in one round. And then, like, Selfina here, for example, is in kind of a bad spot now. So you want to have a good combination of 2 range on at least like 2/3 of your guys, so that whoever spawns in front of these doors, there's at least one person that can take them on. And if you're playing with essentially random deployment, like I am, which is how the game is designed, then chances are pretty good that one of the groups might not be able to deal with their Lop-tier mage. And that's okay, as long as you have other tools at your disposal, like if you have units like Seti here with siege tomes. Maybe Asbel can use like a Blizzard tome as well. Blizzard is really nice in this game because it, I mean, it doesn't do like incredible damage or anything, but it puts units to sleep. So like, Seti can basically save the day here, because in the middle it was just Lithis, I think that's Fergus there, and then one of the sisters. I think it might be Linoan. But I don't think I've ever been able to cleanly take care of all these guys in one turn. There are some strategies that I'm overlooking, but on the whole, this is a really difficult chapter to manage, especially if you don't look it up ahead of time and like plan things out a bit. And I think that's by design, that they want you to feel like you can't really plug all the holes. Now, as for the boss characters, you don't have to worry about any of them until you're ready to take them on, except for the sister, who is Sarah, if you don't recruit Sarah, or if she dies or something, because she has a berserk staff. So now, like, me here, for example, I have way more restore staves than I know what to do with, because I took a bunch off of just random enemies in like chapter, what was it, 20, and then in the previous chapter as well. So my quantities of restore staves aren't an issue. It's just that you might not have somebody nearby who can restore whomever it is that gets berserked. In my experience, that's usually Galzus, if you deploy him, because he has quite high HP. And because of how deployment works in this game, he usually, like, I think every single time I have played this chapter, ends up in the, like, next to the sniper, who is Evil. And we definitely are going to get the Evil morph here. They have kind of like these sickly yellow portraits, which is pretty creepy and a bit sad. And he's like a pretty good candidate to take her on. I mean, he's a good candidate to take on anybody, but, you know, you could do worse than having him in that spot. And he takes care of his Lop-tier mage, no problem. But it's really just, this chapter's a balancing act. Another thing you have to think about is just who you want to plug the tiles on the far left and far right. I think you see here, I think that's Finn, who is in the upper right. Reinforcements will start coming from there, starting like turn 2 or 3 or something. And so they're easy to deal with, although I always kind of forget exactly which tiles they spawn on, because it's actually not as obvious as it might look when you're actually in the chapter and looking at all the places you can move to. And you're going to have probably a few filler units, or if not, you can use like your staff users to plug those holes and just have them use staves at range, like I've been talking about during this run. So if you don't have somebody that you need at a certain spot, then, you know, you can use warp and rescue to get people to where they need to go. You want to make sure that all of your staves like silence and everything are on the right people and like distributed somewhat evenly. For some reason I have like 3 silence staves on Sarah, and silence is like sort of not one of the more useful ones in this map, because especially in this first part, there's just more physical type units than there are magic type units. And you can use one to silence one of the lob tier mages if you can't kill them. However, some of those tiles inside the rooms boost enemy magic, or not enemy magic, but just whoever's standing on them, which in this case is them. So they might have such high magic that you can't actually silence them or whatever, even with some of your better staff units. So it's tough. The nice thing is that if you have some rewarp staves lying around and some of your more powerful guys are like, let's say for example you have one of the sisters promoted and they can use like, you know, Resire. You could rewarp them in there and then they would get that magic boost and they could potentially take on some of these guys. The problem is that some of these Armor Knights actually have decent weaponry. Some of them have master weapons. And some of them just have crap, like they have like poison axes or something, and they're like complete non-factors. But you have to check pretty meticulously all of the units, inventories, skills, everything. Because despite the fact that these units are modeled off of your guys, sort of, it doesn't line up, and I'll explain what I mean by that after I have a little bit of a post-mortem on Homeros, who just ate it there. I have never completed this chapter without having somebody die, even casually, because what usually happens is whenever I play a final chapter in a Fire Emblem game or a Saga game, I'm like, okay, well, whatever, it's the final chapter. Even if I'm resetting for guys, there's no point in resetting here. And, you know, when I started this, I was like, is this going to be the time that I complete this chapter without a death? And the answer is no. And I was really sick of hearing the, like, you know, you messed up music in this, especially because I like the music that plays in this chapter normally. You know, it wasn't so much that I didn't want to be reminded that I screwed up. It was just, I did not want to hear that music anymore. It was getting kind of grating. I had to listen to it for a lot of the previous chapter as well. This was the last in a marathon play. I think I mentioned in a couple of the previous videos that I played chapter 15 all the way up through here in the course of one afternoon/evening. So I was a bit fatigued by this time. The way I could have avoided Homeros dying there would be not so much, like, it wasn't that I shouldn't have put him there necessarily, it's just my item management and just general decision making weren't up to par in a global sense. And that's what causes most of the mishaps in this chapter. And yes, that means there are going to be more mishaps, unfortunately. We'll get to those as they come. So, rest in peace, Homeros. You were pretty useful in this run. Not my best Homeros ever, but he was definitely worth the investment. He usually is. I've warmed done Homeros a lot. If we get to the credits of this game, I will do some little ditties on each of the units that I've used. Although, I guess probably you've looked at the length of this video, and you can probably infer that, yes, I did beat the game. So I'll stop talking as if we don't know that I'm going to beat the game at this point. But anyway, like I said, this middle room on the top here, this is one of those ones where the armor knights are basically no threat. There's the creepy Avil portrait. The reason that she's a sniper, if you don't know, is rather than like a sword master, is because her real identity is that of Brigid from Fire Emblem 4. What happened was, after the Battle of Belhala, she survived, but she lost her memory, and there's this whole like little side plot where apparently she entered into some sort of I don't actually know how to pronounce this word. I've never spoken it aloud. JS something. It's basically like a pact where she has to fulfill a certain, or be beset with a certain sort of curse almost in return for a favor. And her, if you re-recruit her and she survives this chapter, in the credits it actually talks about it, and I'll put that in the description of this video. It's kind of like this understated extra little plot about Brigid / Avil in the Yggdrasil chronology. It's pretty cool. Not super important in the grand scheme of things, but if you want to understand how she ended up here and why, then it's kind of cool. Not a lot of people that I've talked to have actually delved into that point so much. So let's talk about the skills that some of these units have. I don't know that many of the generics have skills. These berserkers in the middle might have wrath, but I rarely go toe-to-toe with them unless I'm like really bored. Each of the bosses that's standing on those center tiles of the little rooms, 3 of them have wrath. So right there, just be really, really careful. Don't engage them on player phase. It's not worth it. You know, unless you can. I don't think any of them have 1 range, although the Raedric one just has 1 range, I guess. And the Thief Fighter also has 1 range, so most of them have 1 range, but definitely do not engage the Ceramorph on player phase. I have lost Sed. I've lost Seti to her. That should give you an idea of just how dangerous she can be. So try to have, I mean, you can still use Seti, just make sure it's on enemy phase that he deals with her, or else you will regret it. The Thief Fighter actually has, like, Vantage and Wrath, so it's like the game's designers just, like, messed themselves up there. I don't know why they did that. I mentioned before that they cancel each other out in this game, so he still does have Vantage, he just doesn't have Wrath, essentially. So that's funny. There's like other weird skills. I'm actually going to, rather than just improvise this and say, like, hey, maybe I'm not right about this, I'm actually going to open the page I have here and look at this. So the Thief Fighter has Vantage, Wrath, Steel, which doesn't matter because he's not going to use it. Adept, I guess that can be dangerous. He has a Berserk Sword. So if you really want to send like one of your 1 range guys at him, then that can be a problem. This was really sad. We're gonna have a really sad ending for Leaf with both Nana and Miranda dead, because they both have dialogue with him actually, and they're both of like a semi-romantic or completely romantic nature. I actually made a a funny image macro about it, which I'll also try and link in the description if I remember. Because Miranda is basically like, hey, Leaf, if you want, we could, like, be an item. And Leaf is like, you know what, I'll think about it, I don't know. And then in the very next exchange, he turns around and says to Nana, like, you know what, I think we should just get married right now. I think that would be really awesome. And I always kind of wondered how Miranda felt about that. I assume she wasn't really far off when that conversation happened. But yeah, this is just another instance of, mismanagement. One of the turns, like at the beginning of the turn before she died there, if I had just prioritized getting somebody with a restore staff over there, then I could have saved her. But as it is, she is dead. I'm able to stop bleeding here, but the damage is done. Not the worst loss you can have in this chapter, especially because my Nana was kind of underused. I didn't even promote her. I probably should have promoted her rather than Rita, but again, neither of those things really would have helped me beat the game. Maybe a better combat-oriented Nana is like a good thing, but I don't know that I would feel safe putting base-promoted Nana up against any of these guys. And there's really no reason to. Let's see, the Galzus morph, the mercenary or the hero or whatever you want to call it, it's exactly the same as the real Galzus. It's has Luna and Astra and the exact same inventory. So he's got 2 range. You want to try and take care of him with a staff, like put him to sleep or something, because that's one of the ones with lower magic. Same with the Thief Fighter. Trying to tab back in case I missed a major point. So if you see something worth commenting on, and I don't, that's probably why. The Ceramorph has Adept, Wrath, Miracle, and Paragon or Elite, which doesn't matter. Those are all things that the real Sarah has. Although, does she have Wrath? That's a good question, actually. A lot of people like to put Wrath on Minoan, but I don't know that Sarah has it by default. I don't know why I don't know that either. Wow, she does have Wrath. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I knew there were some people who like to use her as a combat unit, but I just never feel safe doing it. So she has a Resire Tome. So that's also another good reason not to attack her on player phase, even if she didn't have Wrath. So that's really nasty. As you see here, looking back into my playthrough here, I ended up just putting her to sleep with a Blizzard Tome, because that type of sleep is not reliant on having a higher magic stat. So that's another really nice thing about getting a Blizzard Tome. If you can get one off of that boss in chapter, 22? The one that I cheesed. There's another one you can get in the chapter before that, although I don't think I got that one on this run. If you can get both, and there might even be another one somewhere in this game, then, more power to you. That's really good. If you have SETI, you're guaranteed to have somebody who can use it. Asbel may be able to use it if you've used Grafcaller and Wind Tomes on him enough. He may have a rank Wind. So you might have 2 guys who can use it, and they can cover different parts of this map. So that's very useful. The Avel Morph has Adept, Miracle, and Wrath, and the real Avel definitely does not have those things. So those are liberties taken with that. Something that always seems to happen here and if it happened this time, I missed it. But like I said, Galzus always seems to get put there, so I have him take her on. And what ends up happening is she always procs Miracle. And then, like, with Galzus' Flame Sword or Master Axe, he just ends up, like, procking Astra at least once, and like, missing her, like, 10 times in a row. And wasting his entire weapon, just, like, exhausting it in the course of a single turn. And it's not really that dire. It's just funny that it always seems to happen. Miracle, I don't know that I talked about it. It's the formula is actually pretty. It's pretty liberal for a skill that is mostly player based. It's luck times 3 percentage. So if you have like Finn has Miracle, for example, if you max out his luck, that's a 60% chance not to die on a lethal hit, unless there's something I'm missing. Somebody might have explained to me the peculiarities of if you have Miracle at some point. I've just forgotten, but it's pretty liberal. It's also liberal in Berwick Saga, although I couldn't recite the mechanics off the top of my head for that. And then the Raedric Morph also has Wrath and has Pavise, which I think the real Raedric also has. Not Wrath, but Pavise. So you can have Leaf take him on just like he did in the previous chapter. Just, don't attack him on your own face, because that will mean game over and potentially the end of your run. And then the Dagdomorph has no skills. He just has a Master Axe, so still dangerous, but not doubly dangerous in some respect. So if I haven't talked about it quite yet, the object of this is to have somebody stand on every one of those runic tiles, which I've already started doing. And that makes the center room open up, and it also makes the reinforcements from the 4 corners stop. At some point, I think I already alluded to that, I stood on the wrong tiles. And the units that spawn there aren't, like, exceedingly scary. I think there's, like, snipers and stuff, so there are some promoted units. But they're not, like... It's not the end of the world if you let a couple seep through, as you're going to see here. Unless you, like, accidentally left Safi in range to get eaten up. So, just be aware that they're there, and if you're already metagaming, just make sure you're standing on the right tile, because it's kind of wonky. They're not uniform. And there's a couple other spots in the game where it's like that. It's like the spot isn't quite where you think it is, and that's kind of lame. Another way that I could have optimized this chapter better is just there's at least one part where I like warp Seti somewhere to deal with something, and then I like warp him back, and it was very inefficient in that way. I nearly run out of like transporting type staves in this chapter at some point, and that was very aggravating. You can't get stuck in that respect, because those little narrow pathways around the sides of the center room there, the walls rather, you can move along those. It's slow, but you can get around. Obviously, you have to open all of the doors at some point, unless you have, like, 6 people that can rewarp, I guess. So you do have to have at least some lockpicks left, or, like, 6 door keys. You don't need one for the center one. That one opens automatically. It's not as if you have to stand on the tiles and then go unlock it. It just opens up. I suppose another thing you could do is, like, if you happen to have, like, you know, some door keys and you have other people with rewarp staves, then you can kind of piecemeal it together. So I think it would be pretty hard to get soft locked on this, quite honestly. To my knowledge, none of the enemies that spawn as reinforcements have, like, door keys on them or anything. I mean, actually, I have the page open, so I might as well just look that up. Apparently, the 6 lock-tier mages that you want to kill on turn 1, apparently those have door keys. I don't know how useful that is, because they're behind the doors, and I don't think they would ever come out. They don't have rewarp staves, so I don't really know what that's about. I guess you could thief them off with Tina. Thief ended up being really big for me here, and one thing I'm proud of myself for is that I managed to use all of Safi's repair uses in this run, which was pretty cool. I usually end up, like, I always end up using it some. I don't completely hoard it, but I don't think I've ever used every single use and had it be useful in this run, so good for me for, you know, doing what I'm supposed to do. Here you see why, late in the game here, why like, hoarding too many meteor tomes, and, like, making sure to capture all of them in, like, early chapters and stuff, just isn't that big of a deal, really, because meteor's not that powerful. Like, we saw those mages in chapter, was it 20? The one where you have to kill that invincible baron. Those meteor mages that spawn at the end, and they're just, like, paltry. It's just not that great of a tome. Blizzard at least puts people to sleep, so that's great. And get ready to see a lot of me looking at all of Sarah's silent staves and trying to find uses for them. These berserkers in the middle are, like, they never move at any point, so it's not that big of a deal. Like, if you insist on moving into the throne room there on foot, then yeah, you have to deal with them. Although I found a creative way to take care of them in this map. So as you can see, some of these rooms, in fact, I think actually all of them have spaces where you could send somebody on the side there to bait some of the units inside. That can save you some time rather than having to circle all the way around to the door. In case, like, Galzus, for example, has already taken care of his task, and you want him to come help with another room. So there's lots of avenues of attack. It's just that taking care of the Ceramorph is often a problem. Once you've waited out her berserk uses, like, as long as you have somebody on hand to cure it, then after that, it's like it's not like she is going to rewarp around the map and try to kill you, like in the last chapter of Tearing Saga, for example. That's pretty scary. We'll talk about that in a future Tearing Saga run. Once she's out of berserk, all she has left is her Desire Tome, so you can take her on at your own pace, but still, there's plenty of opportunity for danger there. Getting one last attack in here with Selfina. I guess it was Selfina on this side and like Tanya on the other side, now that I'm looking here. I think I referred to them as one the opposite earlier in the recording. Yeah, this is definitely, like, obviously I cut the preps out, but something I did, which I always do in this chapter, is just I try to balance out the status staves as best as possible, like I said. which I didn't do a good job of this time. But also, just since I tend to run out of inventory space for all the staves that I have, anything like that, any staves or just anything else that's useful, like vulneraries or whatever, just put them on random units, even the ones that can't use them. And they can just be backpacks. Units like Finn are good candidates for that kind of stuff, because like what they can do on foot is kind of limited anyway. So it's like, you end up putting like one sword in their inventory, and then they have all this space that you can use. So that's what I recommend you do, is just throw pretty much everything in your convoy onto all of your units. Especially if it's Iron Man and you don't have the opportunity to go back and tweak it if you want. But if you prefer to metagame at all, definitely review the placement of all the units, look at the inventories, because better planning can make this chapter go much better, a lot less spinning your tires and kind of moving around. At this point in the video, there's kind of a long-ish segment where not a lot really happens. I mean, it's important in the grand scheme of things, but it's a lot of hullabaloo over basically like 4 or 5 enemy units that I'm managing in a very inefficient way because of my hasty preps. So I'm going to fill this segment with kind of an impromptu musing on just the nature of Iron Manning and how it relates to Fire Emblem 5. This is, at this point in time, I would say Fire Emblem 5 is most likely my favorite Fire Emblem. It wasn't always. I discovered it kind of late, actually, compared to a lot of other people who have been around in the community for a while. I've sort of been in the Fire Emblem community, like, sort of invisibly for as long as anybody, but I never really, like, put myself out there in it. Some of the names that have just been there since the beginning of time have. Because I first played Fire Emblem, like a lot of people did, outside of Japan, with Fire Emblem 7 when it was first localized and brought over officially to the United States and elsewhere. I only played Fire Emblems 4 and 5 when a friend of mine started playing them, and so I just figured, oh, this will be cool, I can finally play these and talk about them with him, and it was fun. And I like both of them a lot, but this one is, I think it's the pinnacle both, just in this kind of global sense of like, the graphics are great, the difficulty is great, the added mechanics are great, just all that kind of stuff. And this is kind of a divisive game, I'm sure you know. Maybe some of you watching haven't really played it that much yourself, or you haven't like mastered the game really, and maybe you have opinions like that this game is unfair. It's well known that this game, if you just play it without having like a manual or a guide or anything like that, there are certain things that it just doesn't go to great lengths to explain to you, if at all. And like we've talked about, there's a lot of hidden mechanics and everything that you're not really supposed to worry about while you're playing the game, but they are there, and if you know that they're there, you can take advantage of them. So a lot of these kinds of things really rub people the wrong way. It's also the most prone to RNG. Enemies can have random stat variants, I should say. There's nobody can hit all of the time, and nobody can avoid all of the time because of the hit floor and ceiling things, stuff like that. And then there's just segments like the Manster arc where the game really wants you to just be in a disadvantaged situation that has nothing to do with just facing strong enemies. There's also just the story is dictating that you are to be at a disadvantage. So there were a lot of things when I first played this that like my perspective on warp was quite a bit different, and there were some other aspects of my playstyle, my general playstyle across like any Fire Emblem that I had to rethink in order to succeed at this game. It made me a better Fire Emblem player, probably made me a better gamer in general, honestly. It improved my critical thinking. This game just made me better, I think. Not so much as a person, but just as somebody who plays video games for whatever that's worth, which it isn't much for most people, I'll say. But I think this is a very rich game once you get down to it. And it's once you do understand it, it's one of the best, if not the best, to Iron Man. Aside from maybe Fire Emblem 4, because there's a lot of things that are like built into it, I think, that help with Iron Manning it, and we'll get to that probably sooner rather than later. But this one has like a unique sort of challenge to it, whereas like Fire Emblem 4 just kind of it throws like, you know, super mega units at you constantly that can just do millions of damage like at base level. And it's kind of, it tries to make you feel empowered, I think, quite often. Whereas this one kind of levels the playing field out a little bit. And I think you'll find, if you're kind of on the fence about this game, that if you put the time into it, you'll reach a similar conclusion, I think. And this also draws back to like a more global principle I have about games, which is trying to play them in ways that the developers clearly, or at least like you can infer somewhat that they intended that they be played. The most popular current translation patch of this game recently added functionality in that in the first versions of their patch, some of the hidden data and things like that were shown by default, and a lot of people, including myself, didn't exactly like that because it enables like a different experience than what was intended by the base game. Like you can't really argue that so much. So they I think rightfully made it so you can turn those things off if you want, and especially like controlling deployment, things like that. I think if you play along with the game, then you're in for a unique experience, and like an experience that is different every time you play. I've never had a run of this game that just felt like the same as before. It's not like Fire Emblem 7, where every time you play, like Marcus is a monster. He just he's great for the whole game. He's like, you know, not a typical Jagan character. He's just plain good, and the game keeps giving you units that are amazing, and like you really have to try to like get all these characters killed and just somehow make yourself unprepared for, like, you know, the end game chapters of that game. It just the way those games empower you, I think it is just kind of boring at the end of the day. I still love many of those games for like different reasons than I love this game. But I think it's a more rewarding experience overall if you put time into this one. And I understand that not a lot of people, even hearing that, are ever going to be convinced that they'll reset for any character death. Like, no death can be tolerated, even a unit that you don't plan on using at any point after that chapter, maybe. And certainly in even like intermediate runs and stuff, there's definitely reasons to reset for certain characters and like certain missed items and stuff. But if a game is designed well, or if a Fire Emblem game is designed well, then I think it will almost be better if your units die, because it'll provide alternate scenarios, it'll provide alternate content for having units die. Like, even if it kind of doesn't make sense in context, like how you can recruit Ilios if Olwen is dead, like the game doesn't actually make any sort of justification for that, but at least it's acting against your instinct to what I think often amounts to wasting your own time. And I think people who reset for anything even probably feel frustrated by like, say, getting to the end of a chapter and just resetting, or like, quote-unquote, having to reset. I mean, nobody likes resetting, even if it's getting them the outcome they want. Nobody likes having to do the same thing over again, having to repeat the same actions, and then getting frustrated because somebody's level ups weren't as good as they were in the previous attempt, that kind of stuff. And I don't even think this game necessarily does that aspect of it the best, because like Fire Emblem 4, for example, you get entirely different characters in the second generation if certain characters die, or, I mean, they don't necessarily have to die, they just have to be like not paired or whatever. So it's not quite the same thing, but dying often is what galvanizes these sorts of changes in Fire Emblem 4. That's just how it works. So I'm going to frame it that way, at least. And I think it's unfortunate that I mean, some of the later Fire Emblems, if somebody dies, you'll sometimes get like alternate dialogue, but it's more often that you get like the absence of something. But starting with like Radiant Dawn, for example, they started making it so that like you not only can you not lose your Lord characters, but you also like aren't allowed to lose like Taronio or like Ranulf, or just kind of like secondary or even tertiary characters the game forces you to hold on to, or it's game over. So I don't know. And like I said, Radiant Dawn is actually one of my favorite Fire Emblem games, although kind of for different reasons. Like, I think it's one of those games that's more beautiful for its flaws, which is like kind of a backhanded thing to say, I think, in a lot of contexts, but I do mean it as a compliment. But I do think it's like kind of an inferior way to design a game at the end of the day. So that's just why I love this game and why I love Iron Manning it, because you're not just having Marcus kill the same guys every time and like he's invincible basically, and you everything is deterministic. You know how everything is going to play out, and that's why there's a lot of games that I either just can't play anymore, or I end up dropping it around the same time. Like, even Fire Emblem 6, which is a much more difficult game than Fire Emblem 7, while being similar. The last couple times I played it used to be my favorite Fire Emblem, and the last couple times I just end up dropping it because, like, Milady just suddenly became unstoppable. So I know how the game is going to play out from that point. Like, Rutger as maxed out speed, and you know, he can kill anything one-on-one. I can already like see how chapters will play out in my head, and though the Iron Man restriction can make for a somewhat different experience, like if you lose like one of those units, like Rutger or Milady, it still generally just amounts to having like a great combat unit, whereas this game throws more novel situations at you that can't really be solved always by sword and shield. Sometimes you need to, you know, use a silence staff or something, sort of like how Sarah has 3 of them in her inventory, ready to go. So if you haven't ever done an Iron Man, I wouldn't necessarily say do this one as your first one, although definitely if you like this game and you end up liking Iron Manning, you should try to do this one, absolutely. But Iron Manning in general, just it's something, it'll make you better, and it'll be one of those things that if you end up liking it at all, you'll find it hard to go back after a while. Although I certainly won't force myself to do blind Ironmans necessarily. I have kind of like gone in with that mindset in a lot of the games that I've tried for the first time, but only in the sense that every run is an Ironman until the first time you reset. So maybe that's kind of a dumb thing to say, but anyway, we've got the center room open now, so we can talk about the chapter again. There's 5 dark mages here, as you can see, and then Veld sitting on the throne. So as I alluded to in the previous chapter, I think, Veld has the tome that can turn you to stone, much that the same as he used on Avil way back in chapter 5. And then he just has, like, you know, the same other tomes that the other guys have. Like, I'm not sure if he has Jormungandr, but I think he has Hell. Maybe he has both. And these other guys have, I think at least one of them has a Siege tome, and 3 of them are just like basic attackers, more or less. Some of them have restore staves, so as you're doing what I'm doing here, and you know, just silencing and sleeping these guys, you have to not only look out for the ones that can do you direct harm, but the ones that can restore them as well. Like this one here. I'm actually using more Thief fuses on, and I'm about to do something that I have not done ever, which I finally realized upon playing the chapter this time. If you give yourself the boost from these tiles in these little rooms, you can even thief Veld. You can steal the stone tome, you can steal every one of his weapons, and you can, you know, render the final boss a cowering freak. And at this point, doing things like that, and like berserking the berserkers in the center just so they would fight each other, were basically just me being punitive. And it really kind of drummed up the runtime a little bit on this, kind of unnecessarily. Because what I could have done is just had Seti like warped in there and just take care of Veld, and then march Leaf right in there. Though, from what I remember from playing this, I think I honestly might have run out of warp staves. Seti has a rewarp on him, I just saw, but you know, there's still a couple of berserkers there, and you never know what can happen, so it just seems like a more prudent, and at the moment, like, I considered it to be the fun option, and it was. I've never quite done it like that. I've never taking the time to take care of like every last unit on this map, which you really don't need to, as long as you've taken care of some of these mages with statuses, then it's not a big deal. Although you have to be careful. If you don't have the means to thief that stone staff away, or not a staff, a tome away, then and you haven't gotten the Kia staff out of that chest from the last chapter, then you have no way of curing that status. And if you don't have any other good means of dealing with that group, then honestly, like, what I've done in a couple runs is soak up his stone uses with just, you know, random characters, which is pretty grim and sad. In the first time I ever beat this chapter, I had several guys get stoned. Not so much because I was trying to. I think I accidentally left a couple guys in range, because, like, for example, whoever's on the center space in the top will, if they're standing on that tile when the next turn begins, they'll be in range of his stone casting, because it is a siege tome. So if you're just kind of like even a little bit asleep, you can easily get some guys stoned, and not in the good way. But yeah, that's this is just kind of the victory lap here. Looks like I did have one warp use left, or like one or two. But everybody was so turned around and everything that I just was like, you know what? Rather than scour everybody's inventories and figure out who has what staff left, I'm just going to work on, you know, neutering all these enemies and just walk up there if I need to. But, you know, at this time here now, everybody is taken care of. I don't think there's any way for me to lose this map anymore from what we're seeing on the screen here. So now everybody can just converge in and use Veld and his buddies as pincushions. Some fun facts about Veld. I call him Veld because that's kind of the commonly accepted name for him these days. He does have, like the first character of his name more so implies the B sound, like B as in boy. That syllable does sometimes imply V as in Victor, although the style rules of this game kind of imply otherwise, because, like, Avel, for example, uses, like, so whenever Japanese wants to impart, like, a sound that it doesn't really natively have in its syllabary, what they do is, like, they take, in Avel's name, they use the sound, and just add the, like, a Dakuten over it, which isn't like a real character, but what it does is it implies the V sound more concretely than the B sound does. So what I'm trying to say is he probably should be Beld, just like Asbel should be Asbel, since the game does use a more concrete V sound when it wants to, rather than saying, like, Abel. So with that, we can infer that it probably, like, if it's not using that with Dakuten, then it's probably supposed to be like just a straight up B kind of sound. And then as a unit, another thing that's funny is that Beld does not have 20 constitution, so I think he can actually be captured and released. I've never tested this, but from what I'm looking at it in the script, he does have a capture and release quote. So that's kind of funny. Might be a little anticlimactic if you don't kill him. But like, what's his face? Raedric, for example, has, like 20 constitution. So even if you want to, you cannot release him and then, make this whole segment with the Dead Lords just not make any sense or anything. So that is pretty much it for Thracia 776. I'm going to let some units have a victory lap here. That's always fun. I'm going to let the game play out here at a slightly louder volume without me speaking for the first part of the ending. So enjoy that, and I will see you in a few minutes. I want to get some of the more meta subjects out of the way here during the turn counts and the proper part of the credits, and because then I want to talk over the unit endings and just reflect on each of those units' capabilities and what they brought to this run. So this was my first ever publicly shown and commentated and everything video series like this, or really of anything. I did do a long form video just before this that had nothing to do with Fire Emblem. And after having completed this, I'm going to work on another one of those rather than like another Fire Emblem run or something like that. But I did really enjoy doing this and commentating it, so I'm going to pick another game, actually, to do next after my next long form video. And I think that game is going to be Fire Emblem 4, Genealogy of the Holy War. And I'm probably going to approach it mostly the same way, just having playing it in Japanese, talking about some of those tidbits, and Iron Manning it, and all that kind of stuff. The approach might be a little bit different. I think I may, what I'll do is skip all the story segments on screen and also have animations off, just to make the videos cleaner, not have to speed things up. That's something that I learned while playing this, was just that having to decide whether or not to speed up or whatever. Just it felt kind of grody to me at the end of the day. But hey, you know, I think it was all right for a first go. I want to thank everybody who's made it this far, watched, and especially those who have left comments, whether it just be encouragement or just saying that you liked the videos, what you liked about it. I consider the comments to be the most important to me about, you know, just the act of uploading these videos to begin with. Those are what make it worth it, more so than things like, you know, number of likes or anything. Those are just kind of like, you know, you press a little button and then you forget about it. It's kind of bloodless. Same with, like, you know, the number of views. I mean, it's nice to know that people are watching, but I definitely value the discussion and the feedback and just the discourse, people learning things, me learning things from you guys. So thank you for that. If you have any thoughts about the run, positive or negative, feel free to leave a comment here. I'd love to hear that. Just any suggestions for like a next run, or any future runs, technical things that you didn't like, and just anything else that I didn't really bring to this run necessarily that maybe you'd like to see in a future run, just like, you know, more features and things like that. Pretty much anything goes, you know. This game has kind of like a rudimentary ranking system. It's just the number of units, basically, that you recruited of the entire cast, and then also I think the number of turns you took, and that's pretty much it. It's kind of simplistic ranking system compared to some of the later Fire Emblems. So our guy Leaf here, he was a pretty good Leaf, especially like early on. I feel like his stats were a bit above average. He didn't turn into any sort of like combat god later on, and believe it or not, I actually have had very blessed Leafs before, one in particular that could like solo maps. It was kind of crazy. He had like extra move level ups and stuff. Finn was great, as usual. He came closer to dying than he ever has for me, because I split him up from Leaf and let him do some stuff on his own, kind of, and that usually heavily nerfs him, I think. but he's my guy. He's kind of the only person in Leaf's entourage that got to speak in the end, because he was the only one who was alive, or not, you know, a statue. Poor Nana almost made it. She wasn't too heavily involved throughout this run. I didn't make very good use of her. Marita, I didn't unfortunately get to use her to her full potential. Not just because I didn't get Astra, but because, you know, I don't know, that I think there's more opportunities to use her if you don't already have like a great Asbel or Ashian or something. Like, she's kind of like your backup plan, but she can be really good. Halvin was whatever. This guy, this is one of my better Ashians. Sometimes he can be aggravating because he like, sometimes he doesn't roll enough strength, and then like he ends up leaving units at like 1 HP or 2 HP or something, like that threshold where, you know, if you'd just gotten that extra point of strength, then he wouldn't be wasting weapon uses. It seems to happen with me a lot. Tanya, I felt like I had to use her because for this whole run, she was the only one who got any move level ups, and those are so fun, and I didn't get to really enjoy them in this run. But this was a pretty good Tanya. I don't think I ever got the chance to talk about my best Tanya, who killed like 50 units in the kill room at 24 Gaiden. I'll have to tell that story sometime. Poor Dagda. I've gotten him killed in the exact same way before. Marty. Funny thing here, his title, he was useless for me this run, but his title is The Man That Dagda Loved. Like, unequivocally, that's what his title at the top there is. And I'll just keep talking about Ronan because he doesn't really matter. But I don't think they're making any statement necessarily about their relationship, because a lot of like Japanese dramas and stuff have used that format. So I think it's just kind of a tongue-in-cheek little title that's meant to evoke something that you, the prospective Japanese citizen, have seen in, you know, your culture's mass media. Safi, highly important as always. Lifis, he has like 6 losses here, and there was something I meant to bring up about that. Oh yeah, it's because if you get captured, it counts as a loss. That's what I eventually figured out. I had a pretty good Fergus. Better than average Fergus, I think. I remember looking at his, you know, initial promoted stats back in, what was it, Chapter 9? I think I pointed that out. And he wasn't looking too good then, but he really picked it up. Karen, you know, she was a unit that visits houses and rescues people. Yep, that's what she does. And gets hit on by SETI, depending on your point of view. 5 wins, apparently. This guy, always great. If we play Fire Emblem 4 next, we're gonna keep seeing him continue to be great. Unless, that is, I get his mother killed or something like that. Which is possible. Definitely possible. This guy, monster as usual. Not my best Asbel. I've gotten like Asbels with move level ups, you know, more defense, like to the point where he can pretty much charge ballistas on his own. But definitely a good Asbel. Got some boss kills. I've killed Beld with him before. He's that good. Graf Caliber can do that, even though the guy has 80 HP. Brighton was about as good as he always is. You know, he's just Brighton. He can wrath a couple things for you here and there, and that's pretty much what he does. Machua. I've had good Machuas too. I had a very sad match of death in chapter, what was it, 21 once, like right at the end. It was like a promoted match who had pretty good stats. I like her. Lara. She did what Lara does, which is to say that she can open doors and later she can dance for you. And I managed not to get her killed by or hit by anything once she got that stat hit from becoming dancer. Funny thing is her thing kind of like hints that she could be a dancer, even if you don't turn her into one. And there's a few of these endings here that kind of do stuff like that. Dawson, his title is basically like Man of Fiery Passion, and I don't know if that's supposed to be referencing like that he felt like he had to, rally behind Leaf after his little brother was, subject to the child hunts. Or I don't know if that's just supposed to be like ironic, because he seems to have very little personality overall. Just like that guy right there, Hicks. Yeah, Hicks is, he's a unit alright. Poor Glade, one of my worst losses in this run. I like Glade. Provides good support for Selfina, who, I don't remember if I mentioned this in a different chapter, but some people think that Glade and Selfina, like one leaves if the other dies. Just from saying this out loud, I feel like I did say this, but I'll repeat it anyway. That's not the case. The other will stay. It's only true of Dean and Lenoan. If Lenoan dies, Dean leaves. But if Dean dies, Lenoan does not leave. And don't ask me how I found that out, because it's a very sad story. This guy, he was another guy who was definitely a unit in this game. Yep. Same with this dude right here. He's got blue hair, which should mean that he's a Fire Emblem hero, right? But it's not really the case. I wonder if people would be keener on those guys if they were like more like your traditional Cavaliers, and you got them early on. Although they would definitely be the most pedestrian Cavaliers. I don't know who that guy is. I don't know why he's in the ending here. Callian. One day I'm going to use Callian. Because I actually like being able to use swords and lances while mounted. It's kind of cool, and I like Connemore and Fred. So in theory, I should like Callian too. Pan, another unfortunate casualty of the Chapter 19 massacre. To be honest, though, I don't often end up finding many uses for Pan later on that aren't just like opening doors and stuff. I mean, he can steal funny things, but you kind of have to go out of your way for it. Salem didn't get to live up to his full potential, but this young lady definitely did. This was one of my most useful Tinas ever. And you could say that maybe the resources that I put into her could have been better put to use, like given the manual to Sappy instead. If that would have been a better result overall. But, I just like using Tina so much. Lenoan, she was a good filler staff unit for me. And that's pretty much all she is if you don't really put in the investment and, get her promoted and, maybe give her, some sort of extra skill or something. But, she's still worth a deployment slot. It's hard not to be when you're a staff user like that. This guy is an animal. He can kill anything you put him up against. I didn't make as heavy use of him as I sometimes do. So I ended up, I think this was my run with the most skipped chapters overall, possibly. So that probably factors into it. Edda didn't need her as much because we didn't go A route. But I still could have used her. This guy died for a good cause. She did not die for a good cause. She just got slaughtered for not a very good reason. Diarmid, well, I guess I got both of those siblings killed, so at least they're together again. That's kind of grim. At least Merida has one parent left. I always thought it was kind of like sad that I feel like he did a decent job of trying to look for Merida after she was abducted by slavers. And in the ending, if both of her parents are alive, Avel's like, yeah, we'll let you come visit sometimes. And I just thought that was kind of cold. I feel bad for the guy. His daughter got abducted, and he had to go through all this crap to get it back. And that's the same thing Avel would have done. Sarah's always good. Easy to get her up to max stats and everything. So that is it. And once again, thank you for watching. We'll possibly see you soon with Fire Emblem 4. And if you're looking forward to that, let me know. Anything else you might want to see in the future, or just any comments, leave them below. Love those. Had a lot of fun with this, and I will see you next time.